Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Voices of Recovery. I'm your host, Michele Eich, and this is my book, How to Kill an Addiction, Recovery with God. In this book, I talk about how to walk out of different situations that are binding us up into a relationship with God. And I have 20 powerful testimonies of people who have done just that. So I'd love it if you check it out. Every week, I interview somebody who has either overcome a life controlling issue or who is helping others overcome. And this week, my guest is Tanya. Tanya, welcome to Voices of Recovery.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. So, if you would take a moment, please, and introduce yourself to our audience.
Yes, well, I am Tanya Tanika. I am a woman person, just like everybody else, and I've had my downfalls and lessons learned. I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, and yeah, I can say that I have recovered and I've been able to help. So I've been on both sides of the spectrum in many different areas.
I love that. That is
Yeah.
amazing. And I love it how people who break free then go back into the trenches and help other people who are stuck. And that's really what Voices of Recovery is all about. That's what my testimony is about. That's what my book is about. People giving their testimonies. And I just want to give people hope that transformation is possible with God. Because even if you were in the most stuck place and you see no way of getting out, God has a way of bringing you out, and he sends people to help pull you out, right? And that's what you're doing, and it's what I'm doing. And you really have a movie star name. Like that name, you
Yes, I
have
have a
such a
movie
great
star
name. I love it.
name.
That's
You know
awesome.
what's actually funny about that name? Oh my gosh, sorry. I have like this piece of hair. You know, like when it's stuck. Okay, I think I got it. So what's actually funny about that name is I went by Tanya for so long. And I was raised that being a minority and being a female, so on and so forth, that I would have multiple strikes against me. So I came out just fighting, right? And so I was like, well, Tanika sounds, you know, a little cultured. And so I'm like, I don't know about that. Tanya's already enough, right? And people don't realize it's like a Russian name. And
Okay.
so I'm like, definitely not Tanika. And so I ran from it for so long. But when I came back out, and we can say from the addiction, right? When I came back out, God just said, I want you to use your fullness of your name. And when I went and
Wow.
I looked at what it meant and the power behind it and
Mm,
the warrior behind it and so on and
oh,
so forth,
yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, I'm
Mm.
prophetically declaring that over my life every time I say it. And so now my brand name is Tanya Tanika, which Tanika is my middle name.
Okay.
And I have never wanted it out there. But for the
Yeah.
first time in many, many years,
Yes.
I did. So
Mm.
it's still sometimes like, oh my gosh, they're saying my whole name. Like they don't really know like the story behind
It's
it
so
though. So
good. And names are really important to God.
yes.
Yeah, when you read the Bible and you read the meaning of the name and everything, it's incredibly powerful. So I love that. Okay, so let's just kind of dive into your story. And if you
Okay.
could just share with people like what brought you to a stuck place in life?
Oh,
That's a
well,
loaded
wow.
question. That's a
Yeah.
question that we could just spend hours and hours talking about. Um, but let's just start. Let's just
Yeah. Well, it's funny because it depends on where you are in your life
right.
that that answer will be, right? And
Sure.
so I'm gonna say that what brought me to my stuck point was God.
Mm.
I was running, which when you hear where I was at and kind of addicted, you'll be like, well, that's kind of weird. But
Mhm.
um, I was running. I was running from my assignment. I was running from many different things.
Mhm.
And I just found myself completely stripped of everything,
Wow.
everything. And literally, I had nothing left. You can have relationships, but feel like you lost them because there's
Mhm.
nothing, there's not, you can be in a place and still have nothing in those.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a complete stripping. So God brought me there.
Wow. That is a wonderful yet horrible and terrifying place to be when God does that to you. And I've been there myself. And the best analogy that I can think of for that process is when the caterpillar lets go, submits to God's process, becomes that chrysalis, and then the transformation process begins of basically rebuilding, because there's no more caterpillar and there's no butterfly, right? You're just kind of in that limbo state, completely reliant on God to rebuild you into something brand new. And I say it all the time, but it's not change, it's transformation, because change is a baby bunny becoming a bigger bunny. Transformation is a worm becoming a bird-like creature that flies, and it's completely different. So it is awesome. The results are incredible, but it is not easy and it can be terrifying. But yet that's what God does. And we all have a different chrysalis. Like my chrysalis was kind of hitting the wall with my sin and my addiction to another person. And for everybody, it's different. So I love the butterfly. I love the transformation. I wrote a book about it. It is just, I can't think of anything better to describe really what God does, but it is scary.
Yeah, I think the scary part about it mostly is that I did it. Like, I know that we can sound really great and spiritual, like God brought me through this. And I was just sitting here thinking that when I said it, I'm like, wait a minute. God didn't do that. God, I mean, he allowed me, I opened up my eyes and I became aware. He put the pressure on me in certain areas by loving me unconditionally and calling
Yes.
me and drawing me to him.
Mhm.
And because I was in his presence more and more, and I chose to say yes repeatedly, not just once, I had to say yes many times.
Mhm.
Because that happened, I got to see where I brought myself to. And I think that's the biggest thing that also broke me free, because I had to take a full on responsibility,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
So God's graciousness allowed me to come into this secret place with him, you know?
Absolutely. And I think that that word responsibility is something that we don't always like, but it is absolutely critical, especially if you're talking about breaking free from life controlling issues and addictions. Because a lot of people, I've worked with hundreds of people who have broken free, and I do this show and I've done over 100 interviews. And I feel like a lot of people are kind of like, well, but you don't understand what this person did to me and this happened and all of that. And we kind of get stuck in that blame place. And let's face it, things do happen. Things happen to children that are horrific. Um, a lot of people who are in an addictive place have been sexually abused, have been severely traumatized. So I understand that. But at the same time, if we don't take responsibility for our part in the journey, we will stay stuck. And it's like, well, how can you say that a child is responsible? I'm not blaming the child for what happened, but here's the thing. Now what will you do with it? Okay, this happened, that happened. I totally get that. Things happen to me. But now we have a choice as to what we'll do with it. And if we can give it to God, if we can give it to God, he can partner with us to create something absolutely beautiful and amazing. And I can say from my own journey, I am astounded at what God did in my life. I mean, I'm literally blown away. I never thought it was possible. I never thought it could happen. And yet it did, because nothing is impossible for God. So that word responsibility, and the sun is just kind of, God is just following me with the sun this morning. But talk a little bit about that, taking responsibility for our choices, because I know that you're a coach. I know that you've broken free from some of your own situations. How big of a part does taking responsibility play in the healing journey and moving forward?
Honestly, it's everything.
Mm.
It's the whole healing journey. Uh, if you're not willing to go through, if you're not, I mean, God can do much, right?
Mhm.
And we've heard many stories, um, testimonials in the Word of God where um, we're like, okay, did he go against the will, or what,
Hmm.
right? So we're just like, what's happening, right? And so, when you're looking at the journey, though, everything is the responsibility.
Hmm.
Everything is a responsibility. If you don't allow it to happen,
Hmm.
if you don't allow the revelation, if you don't yield to it, and I look at it as really, it's before the responsibility, it's the shame.
Mm.
Because see, the body of Christ, and I'm going to speak specifically there, we're supposed to be safe, we're supposed to not be judged, we're supposed to be in this place where we can be empowered, equipped, and trained to then go out and be released.
Right.
But that's not how it's been. And so, this is why so many end up going further into addictions, or they go and they connect with other individuals with other religions and other things, is
Yeah.
because of the shame.
Mm. Wow.
Because, you see others and they're like, now, I'm sure even others that are watching this interview can identify with this. It's like, oh gosh, I feel sick. You shouldn't be sick. You have the word of God. What did you do wrong?
Oh,
Why
wow.
you I mean, you're an apostle,
Yeah.
you're a prophet, you're this, you're that, you're a
Yeah.
child of God. You should be here,
Mm.
right? Or oh, I no, I don't, the financials are here. Well, you should be wealthy. You have power to create wealth. You obviously are. What are you doing wrong? Are you not tithing? Are you
Mm.
not this? Are you not? And so you are constantly ridiculed and
Yeah.
torn apart.
Yeah.
And so instead, you go to others and they love you through. They don't have to defend, they don't have to say anything, they just love you in.
Yeah.
And so once you get past the shame
Hmm.
of it all,
Hmm.
that you fell and that you don't want anybody to know,
Right.
then once, like I said, God forbid anybody knows I'm human. And
Hmm.
even as a leader, that's why, the fall is so high, because
Right.
we don't want to show anybody. And then from there is the responsibility of saying, okay, yeah, I sucked at this moment. Oh yeah, this kind of happened. I could have responded differently, but I reacted and it kind of brought this whole trickle. Or oh yeah, that kind of took
Yeah.
me out for a second,
Mm.
and then just saying, all right, well, now what, God? Now what?
Yeah.
And really a complete surrender. So it's like shame, responsibility, surrender. Because I can
Hmm.
take responsibility and say, okay, yeah, fine, this was my fault. I know that I did A, B, and C, or I was in this situation I probably could have handled better, or whatever. I could have released it sooner, or whatever.
Sure.
We have that, right? And then we never surrender, though.
Yeah. It's true.
So I think it's like this journey that we go through. And people
Absolutely.
recover differently because their environment and their support is different.
That's so true. That's good. And I feel like a lot of people fake it. I mean, let's just be real here. They real talk about faking it. Um, they put on a smile, they put on a face when they go to church, they pretend like everything's okay, or they'll isolate, and isolation leads to more problems. Um, but if we can find a community where we can be real and we can get that support and then take responsibility for our part in whatever happened and then move forward from it and learn, that's a beautiful thing. And that is rare. That's rare in the body of Christ. Unfortunately, I found it to be rare where people can really be real and honest and say, look, I'm really struggling, even if they are in leadership.
No, absolutely. Because, I look at this often. Who's actually mentoring the leaders?
Yeah.
Where can the leaders go? And they burden bear inappropriately, right? They're taking on everybody's burdens. A lot of pastors and others who are leading in church or in many different areas, what they end up doing is they actually are being counselors and doing all this other stuff. And it's
Yeah.
like, that's not your place. You're not a certified counselor. This is
Mhm.
not where, we don't just throw scripture at things. And I think that's where a lot of individuals think. But um, something that's interesting, I believe, what really determines some of the healing that people go through is that we put a time on it,
Oh,
right? I remember when my first husband passed away. He was killed in a hit and run motorcycle accident.
Wow.
And I remember it was, we had to do like our first Christmases, first Valentine's, first all the thing. And, you would hear, oh, you still have issues with that?
Wow.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's 6 months later. Are you gonna, start dating again? What?
Mm.
It's like they put a timeline restriction
Yeah.
on your healing. And it
Mhm.
then now they go back to the same thing all over again. Shame. I should be over this by now.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
shouldn't be dealing with this problem right now.
Hmm.
Right? And
Yeah.
so should denotes a form of a lack. It's
Yeah.
like it feels like a discipline. It feels like, oh my gosh, right? You feel
Mhm.
an insecurity, a shame about it.
Right.
And so, I just that's that for me where it was just it was a that's why I chose certain individuals to be in that inner place, and I really did not have conversations outside of that.
That's good.
Do you know what I mean? And I
Right.
just I gave myself the permission
Mm.
to heal.
That's so good. Amen. Well, and back to what I said earlier, when you have these feelings and people are saying, well, you should be over this by now, then you have that shame. And then you either withdraw from those people or you pretend, oh, yep, I'm great.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. And that's so exhausting. But you mentioned the word lack, and that kind of reminded me of something. If you go back to the Garden of Eden and we're talking about Adam and Eve, the enemy, the serpent, was able to tempt them with lack. Okay. They created this lack mindset. Well, if you did this, you could be like God. See, God's withholding from you. And, you should just go ahead and do this. And it's like, yeah, I really need that. Even though they had access to absolutely everything that God created in this paradise. And that's really what the enemy does. Like, you don't have this, or God's holding out on you. You need to do this. And lack kind of leads into sin and disobedience. And we try to fill this void that we now suddenly believe that we have. Well, I lack something. I better go fill it. I better go do that. I better go be with that person or use this substance or whatever the case may be. We all have different things that are filling that void for us, but they don't fill the void because only God can fill that place. But you know what I mean? How he created this sense of lack in them, then they sinned.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And think about that. Everywhere we go, there can be some kind of lack,
Sure.
right? Everybody, okay, and we can feel we're in lack just by being in somebody's presence because they're farther along than we are in our thought of where in their journey. And then, oh, now all of a sudden it's right back to and I've heard this over and over, if I didn't have my kids, I would be here. If I didn't have to, if I didn't drink or smoke or do this or that, I would be here.
Right.
And it's just like, okay. So again, it's passing the blame.
Yes.
Right? It's like, but it's all triggered by, always seeing that you're not enough.
Yeah.
Thinking that you're not enough. And so it's funny because I love when you say that, because the enemy it says don't be ignorant of the enemy's devices.
Right.
So why yet are we still so ignorant at the fact that this is how he works? Like, his number one tool, like his first thing ever was like, yo, you lack this, you're not worth it, you're not this, like, oh, okay. And we still fall for it. It's just clothed differently, put a little lipstick on, maybe looked more sexy,
True.
But nevertheless, it is still the same.
It's so true. Yeah. Yeah. Why haven't we figured this out? This is like enemy tactics 101. This is like so easy. Because his word says that he has given us everything we need for life and godliness, and everything means everything. And it is, again, our responsibility to access it by faith. And then we are complete in Christ. We're complete in Christ. And I don't want to get into this story, but I put it in my book and it reminds me of my story. But uh, in the book of Hosea. Hosea was the prophet. God told him to marry a prostitute. He marries Gomer. And, we talked about names at the beginning of the show. Gomer means complete. Gomer means complete. She had a hidden name. She had her destiny in her name, but she didn't feel complete. And she was just chasing men to fill that void in her life. She's having children that aren't her husband's, and she keeps running and she gets sold into slavery. So we are complete in Christ. We lack nothing. And when we understand that, and then the enemy comes and tempts us with XYZ, we're like, no, thanks, I'm good. If people understood that right there, that would be transforming.
It's funny, because it's too simple.
Yeah.
See, it's like it has to be more complex than that. Like when I coach individuals, I'm like,
Right.
so then do it. They're like, but it's more complex. I have to get this and I have to get that. No. Do you have an offer? Well, yeah. Can you use PayPal? I mean, can you just charge, use a, well, yeah. Then do it. But the program's not done, and all this. So then my question is, if you know that it's simple and there's an underlying reason why you're not doing it.
Exactly.
It has to be greater than,
right.
than that, because now I've taken away all the barriers and all the justification and the excuses, and you're still
boom
doing the same thing.
Yes.
Still in the same place. But
right.
But I love it. I love how you said, I even wrote it down, like, destiny, there's destiny in our name.
It's so true.
Just like I was saying, earlier, like, just realizing Tanya Tanika and what was actually in it. It's
so beautiful.
But it's a journey that we all go through, right? Our journeys are different, and we make our decisions, but sometimes we do need to touch the stove and see that it's hot.
Yes, we do. Yeah, absolutely.
Dad's like, no, Dad, do it. And we're like, I'll just see for myself.
Yeah, and then we learn, and then it's our responsibility to not touch it again.
Yeah, right.
I like to say the upside of learning the hard way is learning. All right. Well, you mentioned earlier that you kind of ran from your destiny. You were kind of on the run from what God wanted you to do. And that probably helps you with clients and people you coach and work with and recovery and whatnot, who are also running, right? So talk a little bit about that, if you could. What was God wanting you to do? What were you running from? What was causing you to try to avoid what God had for you?
I want to say that it was at one point for over, many, many years, I was dealing with not necessarily non-believers, but everyone. Mm-hmm. Then recently, in the last 3 years, God had me go out and start dealing with believers and the Word of God, and building in that sustainability. But I'm going to have to say that I was running from truly stepping into my authenticity, because I am not the average fivefold leader that you would probably expect to see. Mm-hmm. And so I was always very much unorthodox. I just, a visionary, go-getter, but I still wanted to dress how I wanted. If, I'm like, hey, if you see me wearing red lipstick, you know how I feel that day about myself, Yeah. So, but it would always be like, oh my gosh, don't do that, because they will think that you're a prostitute, right? Because of all these
religious mindsets.
Yes, all that, right? And so, don't do this and don't do that. And it was just, to really truly bring who I am out to where I can operate speaking about the word and, equipping, training, and uniting the believers according to Ephesians 4, the way that he had designed me to, without having to be, my biggest thing was in a box. being stuck in the four walls of the church because that's
Mhm.
what was
Mhm.
thought,
Mhm.
until I really dug into the word and realized, wait a minute, like the way that God built was in the marketplace,
Yeah. Mhm.
right? Where did he
Mhm.
minister? Where was their government? Where,
Mhm.
where was their arts and entertainment? Where was their business? Where was their family? Where was everything was there?
Yeah.
And just looking at the model and realizing that I was going to pioneer and I was going to break a lot of the thought processes of religion.
Yay.
And I
Come
remember
on.
yes,
Yeah.
I remember my coach, she said many years ago, um, and she said, I see you have the sword of William Wallace. And I
Mm.
was like, oh, okay. And when I went and I looked like Braveheart and all that, and I'm like, oh
Yeah.
crap. I was like, I don't want that sword. Take it back.
Yes. Mhm.
Um, because it takes a lot to
Mhm.
step, especially with the criticism of the body,
Yeah.
because everybody wants to, to pick the word to suit their fancy, and I'm not going to do that.
Right.
Um, and I was a leader that I exposed faults, failures, and I know I'm not perfect, and
Mhm.
I wasn't willing to hide that. I wasn't willing to hide that anymore. So in revert to that, I ended up doing all that, trying
Mhm.
to fit in.
Yeah. And I think we all
So
do that. We all try to fit in, and I think the root of that is pleasing man, pleasing people. And when we get to that level with God, when we know that God loves us no matter what, for me personally, I just didn't care as much what other people thought. It might bother me 1 out of 10. It used to be 10 out of 10. So I'd like to get to 0, but I'm making progress. When you're secure in who you are in Christ and who he's made you to be, and you can walk into the destiny that he has for you, that is a level of freedom that is so incredible. And I'm stepping into that now. And so for both of us, just as being women, right? Being women in ministry and being in the fivefold ministry, the pastors, teachers, evangelists, right? If people don't know what that means, that in and of itself can be a little bit of a thing, and I deal with it. And I was like, God, just give me I don't want to argue with people. If people don't like it, then just keep scrolling or keep moving on. Like, I'm not going to change because of your religious mindset. I'm just not.
you know
um,
it's, it's
you know,
interesting for me though. I was There's that perspective, and then I had another one, which is that's why it was a lot of what I had went through it was just different.
mhm,
And that's why I didn't have a model or understand really how to break free, because I was tongue talking, authority, going for it. I mean, okay, deliverance, healing, all
yeah.
that. I had all that. So very secure in my identity in Christ. But did I trust the ear? So
Mm,
when he would share with me certain things prophetically, I'm thinking, I would then start questioning, well, I don't, the, it was really honestly the fear,
right.
the reverential fear that if I was to speak what I spoke, would I make people fall because I was wrong? So
Mm,
not only, yeah, you're kicking against the goat, you're going, authentically, you're going out there, you're doing your thing in your most authentic self, but
yes.
then are you accurate?
Hmm.
Like, are you going to be like, yeah, I'm going forth, and then all of a sudden be like, oh, I had that all wrong, like really major topics and so it was one of those things. It wasn't quite the fear of the person, but it was, I had been gaslit for so long.
Mm,
My gifts had been prostituted for so long by my own leaders.
oh,
um, Many knew I was called to the fivefold, but they wanted to put me as an elder, or they wanted to put me as a deacon, or they wanted me to, do for free exactly what I did full time for my business.
yeah.
and to the point where I couldn't feed my family anymore. Like I couldn't do anything. I
Mm-hmm.
was working 60 hours for the church,
Mm,
and they would see everything falling apart in our lives, not having food, not this, and do nothing about it.
mm-hmm.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it was that type of thing that really got me. And so, with all that being said, that's actually what got me to work the way that I did.
Okay. Yeah.
Where
When you're hurt by the world, it's kind of like, yeah, you kind of expect it, they're lost and everything. But when you get hurt by other believers and used, it's difficult. Okay. So one of the things that we chatted about is that I don't think you like the word workaholic, but that you kind of ran from some things and dove into work to avoid whatever God had for you. And I'm not wording this, I'll let you put it in your own words, but let's have a conversation about that, because I feel like a lot of people keep busy, and busy is like our mantra. Everybody's busy, right? And we kind of wear that as a badge sometimes. And yet, are we really doing what God has called us to do? And I think that the whole work thing is a problem for a lot of people, but it's somewhat, well, it's more socially acceptable than having a drug addiction, right? Well, I work all the time. Yay, I get an award and I have all these
right.
accolades, right? So let's have a conversation about that.
Yeah. I think mine, it was like this double-edged sword because it was a form of rebellion. But then it was also a form of me saying, okay, I'm nervous to authentically speak and to really, go forth, and it doesn't look like church. And so, or what a believer should look like,
Mhm.
because obviously leaders have separated marketplace and church,
Yes.
very much so.
Hmm.
You're a business owner, God forbid you're gone Wednesday and Sunday. Oh my gosh, you're going to hell because you put business before. And I'm like, okay. So there was that where I was pushing towards, because that was the only avenue. And I was so hungry to fulfill and hear, well done, thou good and faithful servant, because I always heard in leadership and what I was taught growing up in the church that, uh, I'm going to miss the mark. I'm going to miss the prize. I'm going to miss it. I'm going to miss it. I'm going to miss it. So I always had this fear that I was always going to miss what God had. If I wasn't prosperous, if I wasn't making enough, I missed it. Something was wrong with me all the time. Forget, or it was always a fight. It was always a demon. It was always something.
Yeah.
Never really taking responsibility.
Mm.
Then it was rebellion, because I am, and what I call, many maybe might call, an alpha female. What does that mean, though? An alpha does not mean alpha in the home. Alpha is actually a definition to say that you are a leader, you're a go-getter, a visionary in your profession. Excuse me. So
Mhm. Good.
essentially, a lot of times, excuse me, a lot of times individuals will think, oh my gosh, an alpha woman means that she's taking on the role of her husband.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no.
And that's throughout the word Jezebel.
I'm like, no, that does
Yeah.
not mean that. Let's get it right.
Mhm.
So I'm very, very adamant about looking at definitions, words,
Mhm.
and meanings of things. And so, because of that, it was always like, you should be barefoot pregnant at home.
Mhm.
And if you're not taking care of your family.
Mm.
But I loved my family so much.
Mm.
Not, I mean, I still love, but we're speaking in
Right.
this term, this situation. And so I love them so much. I wanted nothing more to be a mother, to be a wife.
Mhm.
But with all the pressures of everything and who I should and shouldn't be,
Right.
and then, hearing God say go, and then hearing individual leaders say, yes, I operate prophetically and all that, but then if it didn't suit their fancy, and it was like, this is what is necessary, and then what I said was not valid.
Mhm.
And so all these things happening, and I let it happen.
Right.
right? I let it happen. And so the only thing I can control that I felt like I had, now we go back to control, right?
Yep.
Was to work,
Mm.
was to do business. And I got to hide it because it looked good. I
Mm.
was working.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was that journey. I mean, I just, great. You know, as I was going, you know, 5 figures and you moving up to 6 figures, like you're working and you're doing your thing and everything's great. And this is where I end up meeting 6, 7, and 8 figure individuals where I privately mentor, and they want to commit suicide. They're done. They're not authentically themselves. And now we're restructuring their brand to be able to do everything that they knew that they were supposed to build on, but they took Saul's armor
Mm-hmm.
because they couldn't deal with the 5 smooth stones. They couldn't deal with what they were, you know, how God trained them was unacceptable to the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? How do you
Yep.
go into war without this armor?
Yes.
And so, and this is what that looked like back then. And so that's, you know, that's what I did. I rebelled, and I, and it sounds weird, right? Because like I rebelled and then I dug in deeper to work because, you know, I was not only trying to prove something as a woman, but then I'm also, while emasculating men, because that you know, that masculine energy came
Right.
out, um, and denied that feminine there, which was hard to turn off at home.
Mm.
Like you get back home and you're still doing that. I'm still learning and cautious about how I raise my sons. Am I emasculating them? I've had to
Mm-hmm.
tell my almost 21-year-old, hey, look, I'm sorry if I, you know, did this or whatever,
Right.
and take responsibility. So in a nutshell, I mean, that's kind of what that looked like. And
Mm-hmm.
it destroyed, because I was constantly building, but it was in vain because there was nothing sustainable to build.
Right. When you mentioned Saul's armor, and we talked about this earlier, like that really rings a lot of bells for me because when we all probably know the story of David and Goliath, right? And when David took down Goliath with the 5 smooth stones, prior to that, Saul tried to give him his armor, like, hey, this is how we do things. This is how we do things, and you need this. And God is saying, pick up the stones. And this, they're smooth because they've been prepared in the river, and I could preach on that, and we could go on that tangent, but let's stay focused here. There's so much to learn here, but the bottom line is that what strategy has God told you to do? What has God put in your hand to use to take down the giant or to move forward or whatever? And it is probably not going to look like the world. It shouldn't look like the world, but we see that the world's ways aren't working. So as things get darker, I think we really have an opportunity to say, hey, get rid of that old armor. It's not working. What has God told you to use in the process? And it works because Goliath went down, right? And when it works, the people who were mocking you 5 minutes ago are going to be like, oh, okay. All right. You knew what you were doing, and it's all good. But God is just so amazing, and he knows exactly what we need, and we just can't be the cookie cutter world and do things the world's way, because it just simply doesn't work. And we're living that right now. We're living that reality.
Yeah, like, so I remember hearing this story, and it really stuck with me. And so I'll start with this. I had to accept my callus. And so what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
So a ballerina was getting her feet done. And the lady's like, you want to take off your callus? You know how they, you know.
Yeah.
And so, and she's like, no, 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 don't. And she's like, well, what's the point then? You know, you're getting a pedicure. You want to, and she's like, I need those to do what I'm supposed to do, to dance, to the ability to actually perform and fulfill the assignment. I actually have to have those calluses.
Mm.
And so her body was conditioned, her feet were conditioned for the assignment.
Yes.
Her everything about her was conditioned. And
Mm.
so I had to take on the thought that every decision that I made, God knew I was going to make it. Every area that people might say I was rough in, or that this happened or this happened, or I wasn't enough here, I didn't articulate enough here, or I'm the best communicator here, that was for my callus. And
Mm,
can I do better in many areas? Absolutely. We're always growing, right?
right.
One thing I realized though, when I was self-developing, I self-developed in the sense of in one way, but I read books about business and everything, but I didn't read books about marriage. I didn't
Mm,
read books about raising my children. I didn't read books about my femininity. I didn't read books about who I was as a woman
mm,
and who men are as men and how they communicate,
right.
right? We learn sales and copy and all that. And so when I learned those things, that's what actually changed the game for me.
Mm,
And then I accepted what things I realized, okay, what were things I was able to separate? What were my calluses? What was actually there for the purpose of allowing me to do what I do? But then number two, when do I kind of say, okay, I'm done with that because now I'm in my home. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I'm a daughter. I'm an aunt. I'm whatever, godmother.
mhm, mhm.
Now I don't need to have that callus because I'm not in that working environment,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So it was definitely a journey, um, but I have to say that when you're operating in your most authentic self,
Mhm.
some people, because they've been suppressed for so long, you'll see them on social media. Oh, well, if they don't like it, then leave. I'm leaving behind all the people that did this,
Yeah.
this, and this.
Mhm.
That when you have to post that and do that, I already know that you're actually not healed. That's from a place that you're
Exactly.
not doing well in.
Yes.
Because when you are truly in that place, you really don't have to announce it.
Exactly.
You exude it, you live it, and
Mm,
it's not this negative bashing thing on somebody. It's
right.
actually just a way of life that you have
Mhm.
adapted into yours,
Yeah. So
right? You still
good.
love them unconditionally,
Right.
right? But you know where they're going to be in that outer, that inner, that holy, like you kind of know where to place them and you're okay with it. You're no longer taking on. I think what I also did as that addiction is I took on other people's success and what they did, and I emotionally attached it to mine, to
Mm,
me. So if they didn't succeed, it was my fault. I wasn't the best coach. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. Because I was used to hearing that. I was used to being picked apart all the time about what I wasn't. It was like just enough to keep me down,
mhm.
right? I didn't communicate well. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. Like it was just always just enough.
Mm,
Now, is there truth behind it? Yeah, there was some truth behind it. Some of it there wasn't. Some of it was their projected things on me. And then the stuff that was truth. I wasn't given the grace and the loving, like, compassion that I gave others, to be able to walk through it with me and help me through that process. It was more like, that's your issue. You need to deal with it.
yeah.
That's not mine. Get over it. And it's just like, whoa, okay, well, if you're in my inner circle, it is your responsibility to walk me through and help me at one, right? I mean, if that's
Right.
what we're in covenant for, and we're helping each other and we're
Right.
helping each other grow, right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, the two words that I heard a lot there, and there are two words that I use frequently. Process is huge, right? And journey. We are all in a process with God. We're all on a journey with God. And sometimes it looks great, sometimes it doesn't. But when we can be authentic with other people on that journey, we are going to grow and they're going to grow too. And that's how God designed it to be. He didn't design us to do life alone. Well, our time is almost up here. I know that you're a coach. I know that you volunteer for different people in recovery. I know God has set you free from your own issues, and we're again on a journey with that. But we talked about taking responsibility. That is huge. Other than taking responsibility for your part in your life, and we can only change ourselves, what would you say would be another thing that people can do to help them get unstuck and to move forward into what God has for them?
Surrender. and realize there's nothing wrong with you. Nothing has gone wrong.
Mm.
Nothing has gone wrong. I know we're like, oh my gosh, but I was addicted to meth. Okay, nothing has gone wrong.
Mm.
When we look at it as a sin is a sin, a fall is a fall, a mistake is a mistake, nothing's gone wrong. It happened. Now let's go. We take away the maximizing the bigness of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we just learn, you know, that there is no difference.
Mm.
Because see, we as believers have done that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I only lied, but they had adultery. You know, it's like, wait, what? He
Right.
sees it as the same.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know, like people have come to me and they're like, yeah, you know, I was, you know, addicted to this or did this. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So what are we gonna do? And they look at me like, wait, is it that simple? Like you're not gonna put your nose up at me? You're not gonna,
Yeah.
no. Okay, so you were addicted. That's okay. So let's move on. So what are we gonna do? When we normalize mental health, when we normalize the things that we go through in life, the opportunities that we take that might not be good for us or
Right.
good, we have a better chance.
Yeah.
So come go around people that are willing to normalize and say, oh, okay, granted. So what do you want to do? Do you want to get out? Like what's you know, and that kind of
Yeah.
approach. I've seen some people feel so safe, like all their walls came down, shame came down, everything, because it was like, oh my gosh, like I'm
Yeah.
not going to be judged. So
Yeah.
I would definitely, yeah, the surrender, the responsibility, and just normalizing it a bit. Okay, it happened. All right, let's go. We're
Yeah.
going to use that one day. What can we use it for? Maybe you're not right now, but okay, this is great. So let's
Amen.
get through this. Not a lot of people say let's get through this because you have a greater testimony. I feel like that is still manipulative because I'm doing this in order to. I
Mm-hmm.
want to do it for me.
Right. Yeah.
But we think it's selfish. No, I don't care. I want to do this for me. I want to lose weight. I want to be healthy. I want to eat right. I want to stop drugs. I want to stop, you know, pornography. I want to stop whatever it is.
Right.
It's like, I want to stop this because of me,
Yeah.
because
That's
I
good.
want to be the best that I can be because it feels good. I want to wear red lipstick because it makes me feel sexy and I'm good. And this is
Yeah.
how I want to feel, you know? And
Yeah.
so this is what it does. I'm not telling you go and, you know, I want to do drugs because it makes me feel good. I'm not saying go to left field, right?
Right. Yep.
So, yes, but you know, you want to recover because you want to,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
you're ready to actually face what brought you into that situation, why you allowed
Mm.
that circumstance to be a thought, and that thought now to put an emotional attachment to it enough to where it became an action backed up by an action. And then from that action now is a result.
Yeah.
So, what got you from the circumstance to the result that you have now? And are you willing to change the in between to get a new thought, right? Because a
Right.
circumstance is a circumstance. Because you can
Yes.
see somebody who's been through a death in the family. One gets addicted to alcohol and the other one grows, writes a book,
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know, and lives life.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Right.
They were both a circumstance.
That's good.
So yeah, I think just realizing that circumstance is a circumstance. It happens. It does.
Yeah. That's good.
Right?
And as coaches and ministers, we have people kind of like dump things on us, and that's okay. That's part of it. But really it boils down to this. Okay, that happened. Now what?
Yeah.
Now what? You know?
Like, so what? Okay,
How are we
great.
moving forward? What's God? And we, when we understand that God wastes nothing and he can use all things together for good when we give them to him,
Yeah.
it's like, you know, I got all these lumps of coal, but guess what? God's turning them into diamonds. So win.
Yeah. And it's like,
That's
okay, so
powerful.
what brought you to there? I'm so sorry. Like that must
Yeah.
have been really difficult. I mean, that life and all that, you know, and what brought you to being ready? Like actually communicating
Hmm.
instead of getting high off of actually being a coach. some people get high off of being a coach
Mm-hmm.
and being the authority to help fix and everything, that they actually ignore the person they're coaching,
Wow. Mm-hmm.
right? Because they just want to
Yeah.
be used.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, that's what ends up happening. But yes, I would definitely say we just need to normalize a lot of this stuff, that people don't feel ashamed,
Right.
because just like we talked about earlier, like people would not condone drugs, this, that, or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or alcohol or anything or any of the other stuff, right? There's so many other things, right? Or
Yeah.
but they'd condone going, working.
Yeah.
But how many men and women work to the point where they get divorces, they lose their family, they're not there for their children. Their children are now exposed to getting molested and all these other things because their parents are never around, or all this other stuff. So what condones me working a lot and somebody else drinking? They're both wrong,
Yeah.
because one is toiling. They're both sin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
what makes one better?
Right.
Or I'm sorry, I'm probably in sin because I'm a woman. And so, and because, because I'm a woman, and the standard
Yeah.
status quo is differently. If it was a man, everything would be great.
Yeah.
Right. And this is just not, this is reality,
Right.
but it doesn't make the man any more right either, because he's sacrificing his family and
Yeah.
his marriage and everything else, and the authority and the leading of what God said. A man needs to be in his home so he can lead.
Right.
So I think it's just really just normalizing it. The wrong is wrong, sin is sin. It doesn't matter what it is. Like, I don't even need to know what your sin is. Let's just walk through it.
Yeah. That's so good. And let's go back just as we close to David. But it's Goliath. It's heroin, or it's meth, or it's Goliath. And it's like, God says, it's just simple. Pick up the 5 stones, and whatever your stones are, like, use what God has put in your hand. The 5 is the number for grace, God's ability to do it through you, and take the giant down. And it can really just be that simple.
Isn't it cool that, like, it's like, oh, we're not enough, and we're like, but God gave him the 5 smooth stones. What he had was enough. It's like, what's
Right.
in your bag? What
Yeah.
you have in your bag, your experiences, your life, is actually enough. But we try to go through the outside to find out
Yeah.
how to heal and how to do all that.
So good. And part of coaching and ministry is drawing out what is on the inside of you, what God has placed on the inside of you. And God always, always, always has a better offer on the table. Well, it has been so fun to talk to you. I've really enjoyed this. I really feel like your journey is going to help people. And thank you so much for being our guest today. It's been awesome.
Thank you for having me. It's
Absolutely.
a different topic, for sure.
It is, for sure. Yes, it is. All right. Well, let's keep in touch, and God bless you on your journey. All right.
You too.
I want to thank our audience for watching this episode of Voices of Recovery. We're creating a safe place where people can go on their journey with God. If you're new, please give us a like or follow, and we'll see you next time on Voices of Recovery. Bye-bye.